Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, I interview the founder of the Real Talk Project, Amreen Karmali. Check it out. Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of grace. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment, just as you are, just as who you are appreciated and you are loved. I am not alone. I have an amazing guest. She goes by the name of Amreen. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for stopping by.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
For those following along at home and keeping score, this is Amreen's return back. I think that was, it's about a year ago.
Reunited, and it feels so good. Yeah. It's been about a year.
So appreciate you coming back.
Thank you.
Mind if for those who don't know and didn't listen to that episode,
can
I read your bio?
Yeah, go for it.
Amreen Karmali has been an educator and organizer. Yes.
Awkward.
That is you. For those listening, Amreen pointed to herself. I got confused. But I'm back.
We're back.
For over 15 years, she has spent 10 years as a middle school science teacher and holds a master's in education from CSULA in science education. While teaching, she also facilitated a young empowered women's class and a student organizing class, which melded her passions for all things justice-oriented with her love for teaching. The synergy, I love it. This past year, Amreen left the traditional classroom to start the Real Talk Project. Do you have like a noise or a theme song that happens when you say it?
Come up with one. I usually pronounce it Real Talk.
How did I say? The real talk.
Yeah. I've been playing around with that. I'm like, Real Talk versus Real Talk.
Okay.
It's weird.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
Left the traditional classroom to start the Real Talk Project. I like it. Where she combines her understanding of contemporary schooling with critical lens to provide educators and community members with spaces where they can tackle ways in which patriarchy, white supremacy, and other forms of injustice manifest themselves in schools and relationships, while working towards creating new ways of teaching and being together. She is a founding member of the People's Education Movement. Did I do that one right?
Yeah,
okay.
Totally.
Los Angeles, and is passionate about spreading health, healing, and joy to both her students and the community around her.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so cute.
So
I like all that stuff.
I do too.
Thanks.
What we're going to encourage people to do is tomrell.com/Amreen, AMREEN, is where the first interview was. You get a lot of the origin story, how Amreen came to this work.
Okay.
So if you want to hear the origin story, we're going to have y'all pause, listen to that one, and then come back to this one. So where we kind of left off last time was we jumped into a little bit of it, but we left off at the origin story kind of right when you first started the Real Talk Project. So let's jump in there. What's going on with the Real Talk Project? When did you found it?
Yeah.
Just to give us a refresher.
That started all about a year and a half ago when I left the classroom. So it was like June-ish of 2017.
Okay.
And then I think I met you in November-ish. It was like right after my birthday. I remember that. So November-ish, 2018?
Well.
No, 2017.
2017.
So yeah.
That was 2 years ago.
Oh my God.
Wait, where are we?
I don't know.
What year is it? It'll be 2 years in November.
Yeah.
Year and a half.
Year and a half. It's official. So 2017, then I met you, and I had just launched the first round of the Male Ally program.
Okay.
And I think we were doing some talking around then.
Yep.
And then since then, I've done 2 more rounds of the Male Ally Project online. And it got picked up by an organization called Women's Voices Now, who's helping me launch it on a more national, international scale. Yeah, it's really exciting. And this journey has been really wild. And they're a really great organization to work with. They base their work, it's Women's Voices Now. So it's women in media. And they're an archive of documentaries and different films that deal with women's issues, are produced by women, directed by women. So they have access to stuff that I don't really have access to. And they found that the work in, especially after #MeToo, a lot of folks were like, well, what do we do? Right? And they were like, this is a way where we can be providing a service for men to actually take action. And so they were really excited about picking up the Male Ally Project. And so we've created a online program that we're piloting right now. And we've been starting to do workshops with fraternities at USC.
Wow.
And that's like hella powerful.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. So that's been really great. I've also been really lucky to do a lot of workshops in classrooms with teachers and doing professional development around gender justice issues, creating safe spaces. I'm being flown out to Minneapolis this year, I think, hopefully. So that'll be it's been a really great journey. I think it's filling a need, like a lot of this allyship work is filling a need that people are really looking for right now. It's like, how do we do this work to move on to this next level?
Well, that's my next question.
I read your mind like powers.
So context, that is, the Harvey Weinstein, Me Too, I think that broke.
Right then.
September,
it was right
October.
then.
Yeah. And so that's when somebody, Taz, referred us together. So clearly a lot of... Yes, Taz! What's the org she's working with now? 18 Million Rising?
Yes, I believe so.
Check it out. Check it out. So what is...
Life? What is life?
What are some of the things we can be doing? How can men step up our game?
Right. And it's interesting because a lot of folks come to this allyship is different from undoing patriarchy.
Okay.
Right? So there's stuff before allyship that can even be done in like understanding ways that we all, as members of society, internalize patriarchy, understanding what patriarchy is, understanding what toxic masculinity is. That's like all pre-work to allyship.
Well, can we start there?
Oh, sure.
Is there a difference between patriarchy and misogyny and sexism?
I'm still working on finding very eloquent ways to do all of that. I would say that patriarchy is the system.
Okay.
Right? It's the system that we live in where white men have access to a lot more money and power than any other dynamic. And that our society is catered to white men. Misogyny, and I could totally be wrong on this, but my understanding of misogyny is the acts that people do that carry out patriarchy.
Okay.
That's my understanding of it. And then sexism is an overall bias towards men.
Okay.
Does that help clarify things?
Against men?
No. Like that favors men.
Okay, a bias towards men.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. I get what you mean. So you said white men. Can other races or ethnicities of men
be sexist, misogynist,
or
all of that?
Benefit from patriarchy?
Yes. Yeah. I say white men because that is the society that we live in, and it's really important for me to have an intersectional approach and bring up race in these discussions. But yes, and even it's been really interesting. I've even had some trans men be participants in my ally program. So trans men identify as men and can be participants in patriarchal shenanigans, as can women. We're all undoing these things, but the programs I run are specifically for men.
We had a
cisgendered men.
I apologize for interrupting you.
No, that's okay.
We had a great guest on a couple episodes ago who was a trans man and talked about the experience of they'll be with their partner who identifies as a woman and all of the privileges that they get or assumptions that are made.
Yeah.
So most definitely.
Yeah. There's still that benefit, right?
So how is talking about patriarchy incomplete, or how does intersectionality complete how we talk about patriarchy? So this is a big buzzword right now. A lot of people say intersectionality. How does it equip you or make you more able to give a picture of what patriarchy is?
I think it's really important to see the whole person and see society as a whole instead of just really, we're only going to tackle this one issue or, we're only going to tackle this one issue. And I think when we see things from an intersectional approach, we can build more compassion. We can build more connections. We can just hear and listen better, would be my hope. There is so much to heal. It can't just be from one angle, I think.
And hear who or heal who? Like the guys or people who are more the targets of oppression?
I think it's important to hear and heal everybody because this isn't something that just affects women, right? Toxic masculinity affects men as well. I think as a society, we have so much to heal. It's interesting. I can't remember who this quote was by. Oh, that's going to kill me. And I'm going to look it up at some point. Exactly. No. It is a famous yogi. And it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Ooh.
I know.
Can you run that back again?
It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And that one's like really, it's always stuck with me. Krishnamurti. I can't remember the first name though. There's a deep sickness in our society that like affects all of us. And so I think it's the more we share our stories, the more we build with each other, the more we really listen to each other, understand our privileges, our challenges, our goals, the stronger that we can become. And I think hopefully the more we can influence government, big business, people in power, things like that.
So deep. I wonder if you experienced this, or maybe I experienced this because I have so much privilege. This constant pull to go back into the sleep of being adjusted to the society. Where I think of, what if I just embrace without question patriotism? Or what if I just embrace without question capitalism? The certainty, because to be against those things is almost to be in a constant state of agitation.
Right. That's a quote too, right? I can't remember who it is, but yeah.
So do you ever feel that pull too, or do you think it's just because I can conform?
And basic question is, do I wish I wasn't woke?
Or to like that you to not say something, to just be like, government is here for. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I pick and choose my battles. I pick and I choose my battles. There are times where I'm just like, for self-preservation, do not want to handle this right now. I don't think that means that I'm conforming to society. I think that I'm in it for the long haul. And I need to learn how to take care of myself so I can really do work for the rest of my life, because this shit's going to take forever. Yeah. Can I swear?
You can.
Okay.
Any other ones you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance?
So many. Does that make yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So there are times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit this one out.
Yeah.
Or this is not mine to tackle. And there are times where I'm like, okay, this is something that I want to take on.
This might be maybe an aha moment that I'm having, but I think maybe it's slightly different because I can just like, you know what? I'm not going to do social justice. I'm going to believe that it's easier for me to believe that the government's here for my good, that the systems are all good, that people are making a big deal out of everything, because for the most part, they're not out to get me.
Yeah, I don't have that luxury.
That's what I'm saying. So
I can't do that.
When you're talking with other allies, then do you find any reflections that maybe I'm sharing of this, like, maybe I should just go back to the old way? I'm not saying to that extreme, but
do I find that we're like, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, especially when I'm with my people, we can be as basic as we want to be, you know? And it's healing to do that sometimes, to just be like, I'm going to be ratchet, or I'm going to talk shit, or whatever. And then I get that out with people who I'm close with. Yeah. Right? And then, like, I can go out into the world and try to be my best self and try to challenge myself and do that work. But I need that space too. Yeah. You know?
So my mom says social workers have the biggest potty mouths.
Yeah. Yeah. So teachers too. Teachers too. Let it out. Right. Yeah. 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 15 years of no cursing in a classroom. You know, I have the worst potty mouth.
Yeah. You got to vent it somewhere.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So we need those safe spaces where we can just be real, you know?
So the first step you're talking about is first kind of owning your stuff before you can even be an ally and healing that kind of stuff. How do you walk your participants through that?
I mean, that's a lifetime's worth of work, I think, that I try to smoosh into 2 weeks. Yeah. And for the Male Ally project, like the online project, it's the viewing of a film, an amazing film called The Mask You Live In. I'm not sure if you've watched or seen it, or I would highly recommend it if you haven't.
I have not watched it, but I've heard of it.
Okay, yeah, I would highly recommend it. It's a great film. It's intense. It's an intense film that talks about ways men have internalized patriarchy and toxic masculinity affects them. And it's interesting. It resonates with some people. It doesn't resonate with others. But even if it doesn't resonate with a person directly, they have circles that it's like, oh, okay, I can see how it resonates there or there or there. So from there, like, just really looking at like ways that those things have been internalized and how, I think even like understanding what microaggressions are. Right? Because in order to be an ally, you need to know what things are microaggressions, what things are straight up just wrong. I think we all know sexual harassment, those are just straight up wrong, right? But to be an ally, there's also needs to be an understanding of the minutia of like sexism that's pervasive throughout our culture. And so running folks through like examples of microaggressions and asking them to start talking to people about these things and talking to the women in their life about these things and really listening, so that there can be that baseline for like, oh, okay, these are things that I can work on.
Are there any example of microaggressions where you find turn the light bulb on for some of your participants?
Great question. I think even like one of the things that pops that's freshest in my head right now is just the things that women have to do as far as dress and appearance. Right? Like, and I'm having this conversation with somebody right now. It's this idea of like, we have to constantly think about what we're wearing and not on a like, oh, you're going to look sloppy level, but oh, you're a slut or a whore or, you know, like on some kind of violent stuff, you know, like, it's not that like, oh, I'm not going to show up professionally. It's like, oh, people are going to say that like they're going to attack my personality on a really violent level, right? Or my culture and say that my culture doesn't fit because I wear big earrings or my body, right? A lot of women, especially in professional settings, like especially women who are curvy, which is not, I guess, the norm in our society, have to be really careful about what we wear, you know? So those are things that like a lot of times people are like, oh, and there's pushback because there's like, well, men have to dress professionally too, right? But there isn't that fear of like being judged so drastically. And there also isn't fear of being fired, you know?
I was listening to Ariana Huffington's podcast, and I think she was interviewing Jessica Alba. And was talking about how Ariana Huffington is trying to start this, like, I can't remember the exact hashtag, but somebody like repeat an outfit. Because she was talking about the pressure of feeling like you always have to wear a different outfit.
Right.
And I was like, I literally wear the same jeans 5 days a week in the office. Yeah. And like alternate between 4 shirts. Yeah. Yeah. And when I was like this past 2 weeks when I put those, I'm like, wow, like this is not I don't need a hashtag to do this because of exactly what you're talking about, the privilege that comes with. Right. Right. So it's like, and if you look at any like Oscars or any of that, it's like for the most part, all the stuff around appearance is geared towards women. Yeah. Right? And it's all performance. And it's stuff that like, I mean, I love getting dressed up. Yeah. But it's we have to look this certain way. Otherwise we get judged for it. Or unless you're a man and you do something that's like breaks the laws of masculinity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really yeah. Completely. Completely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah. Because I like how it's like very experiential. Mm-hmm. Like what I wear. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. And I think it's one that a lot of women can relate to. So that even if you started this conversation with like women in your circles, it would pull up a lot of things versus like me just saying it. Right? Yeah. One that was always helpful for me is the walking or running at night. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, it was actually this really traumatic incident. I was like in high school. I was like 16 and I was on the cross country team. And I was running. It was probably around 6 or 7. And like this truck pulled up next to me. I grew up in a town called Fremont, which at that time was pretty white, middle income, kind of farming community, kind of not. A truck pulled up next to me and I thought they were going to ask for directions. So I went up to the window and they took one of those big coolers of water and just dumped it on me. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, that shit sucked. It was horrible. And then just drove off. It was like a bunch of dudes like and just laughing, you know? And I get home and it's like, I can't remember, honestly. Like, I remember being ashamed and thinking it was my fault because I was out running at night, you know? Or I was wearing short shorts or something like that. And that's bullshit. I should be able to be safe and run and walk whenever and wherever I want to at all times without having my keys in my hand, without watching shadows. Like, you know? I get emotional about that stuff. It hurts. It is. It's bullshit. Yeah. That's an underlying thing. The more that I've started to have conversations like this is hearing, I thought it was my fault. What do you think are ways that we as men perpetuate this belief that, first of all, for it to be your fault, it's not my fault? It goes, I mean, that is throughout our culture, right? Like, one of my huge things is like, again, going back to dress code, like in schools, girls have to wear pants or dresses to this length, right? Knee length. You can't see that knee length. I'm pointing at my knees. They're here. Pass your fingers. Right? Yeah. And it's this idea that men can't control their gaze or their actions. And so we as women have to cater to that. Right? And so then if we don't, then we're asking for it. Right? So it's our whole lens of men can't control themselves. Women are temptresses. Let's do everything so that we can cater to them. Otherwise, we're putting ourselves in a situation. Versus teaching young boys consent. Teaching that sexuality is beautiful and natural and normal and not something to be ashamed of. In a society that caters to white men, anything that does not cater to that is then the woman's fault. Right? So whether that be like dressing professionally or walking late at night or a lot of times like I'll be called crazy or angry or sensitive or anything that is pushing back will be my fault. Right? I'm the crazy one and I'm the one who like has too many emotions
When I'm saying no, something is legitimately wrong. Like my humanity should be valid and valuable, and that it shouldn't be questioned, right?
Yeah.
So
when you move men, I'm hearing that this is something that we're always going to find different levels of our participation in patriarchy. Whether you're saying it's a lifelong process, but where you kind of do this crash course where we own like the most kind of vicious and strong ways that men are perpetuating patriarchy, then what's the next step? That's when you move into the allyship, or what would...
Yeah. Because this is a crash course, this is just like 101, like here are some tools.
Okay.
Right? And it's focusing on building empathy. It's focusing on building curiosity. It's focusing on communication techniques, and like what allyship actually looks like, you know?
What does it look like?
So it was interesting. When I did this workshop at USC the other day, I didn't know this was a truth bomb, but the homie Richie Reseda, who I was like telling you about earlier, he was just like, oh, that was real. And I was like, oh, maybe I should like quote this or quote myself. But for me, when it's like a true ally is somebody who puts themselves on the line, somebody who risks something to support somebody else. And he was talking about it, and I was like, it's not allyship if you're not risking something, right? And in his context, he's an MC, a hip hop artist, and he's like, a lot of people won't mess with him because he is a feminist, right? And he's like, and that is my form of allyship. My approach to music, or my trying to build myself up as a musician, is hampered because I'm a feminist, but I'm going to stick to that because this is something I believe in. That is allyship.
It speaks to that I was talking about, that call to just like, just give it up.
Right.
Come back to the comfort of privilege.
Right. And I think, I have mad respect for that. I have a lot of, and he was the one, he was like, sometimes I'm an ally and sometimes I'm not, you know? But the fact that he is consistently vocal about women's rights and women's issues shows to me that he is more often than not an ally.
We had talked before we jumped on about like messy allies or men with checkered past wanting to own and step into the work. What are your thoughts on it? Is something like that possible?
Welcome! Join us! This is a journey. Yeah. I don't know any perfect people. Do you know any perfect people? I don't know any perfect people.
Serena Williams.
She's great. But yeah, like we all have messy pasts. And the older you get, the messier they get. And, you know, this undoing of all of this is really important, you know, and it's not like the perfect journey. It's not like, oh, hey, I'm now stamped rubber, like I'm an ally, you know? And I can say that about myself when trying to be an ally to Black folk or trans folk, or I'm consistently on a path of like learning and unlearning and growth.
I think that what's different for myself and many men that I know is that, like, I think it's a nice way to phrase that, but we have actually participated in, like, putting women down, hurting women, taking women's opportunities away, which I think is just a little different seriousness than, like, we all
saying
have
some racist shit.
Like, that we actively participated, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Because you're stepping into a space where some people might object, like, well, this is the person who's the reason why I have triggers.
Right.
And you don't have to be the spokesperson for this question.
No, I think you actually asked me this on the last one, and it was a good, challenging question that I'm obviously still working through. And actually, that came up the other day because somebody I'm working with is like very upfront about things that they've participated in that perpetuated some really fucked up shit, you know? And another woman was like, why are you working with him? And I haven't figured that out with her yet. Like, I need to sit and have a conversation with her, and I'm not sure how it's going to go. I think for me, this is like the work that I'm doing. And so it's calling to me, but it can get really messy. Mm-hmm. It can get really messy. Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for that.
It's all good. Like I said, you don't have to be the one to have one.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of, I do this kind of work too, and men will ask me, and I have the same question. I think a lot of us, especially the more of us with privilege. I mean, in my high school was terrible. At one point, just before I got there, a high school student was in a hot tub with a bunch of professional football players. And everybody was blaming the women. So I remember somebody was saying that recently in the news, there was like kids were playing beer pong and they like did the beer pongs arranged in the swastika. I was like, that sounds like my school.
Wow.
So I think the more you're immersed, the more likely you are to come from a past where...
I think for me, and this is just where I'm at in my life, right? I don't know why or how. And like, I told you last time I was like in a really abusive relationship that was like, and I was around a lot of men like that. I don't know how I would be seeing those particular men again in my life. But I definitely appreciate men being like, I have done these things and I want to unlearn them or I want to do better. I really appreciate that. And I'm trying to help support that as much as I can. I think we were talking earlier about this like throwaway culture. Like, I think when we come at people with this, like, you've done this and therefore I'm not going to work with you, that is recreating a kind of prison system or this idea of fear-based politics that I try not to believe in or partake in. Like for me, just in my journey as a teacher, as healing myself, as a friend, like I try to base myself in love-based movements as much as I possibly can.
What is that? Love-based movements?
I'm sure there's a term, and I just said that word. But I was like,
if it's not made coins by Amreen.
It's mine now. No, I'm sure it's out there already. But for me, it's just valuing humanity and valuing, like, have you heard of the term like transformative and restorative justice? Have you heard of those?
Restorative justice, but not transformative justice.
So restorative justice is this idea that we're going to restore a harm. But transformative justice is that we're going to like transform society. And so when we look at things, for me, our society, again, like I said, is profoundly sick. And I'm not trying to recreate it. I'm trying to, and I'm working with a lot of amazing people to create something new that is based on love, that is based on valuing our humanity, that is based on appreciating our differences. And when that comes into play in terms of allyship, it's having compassion. It's having, like, so I understand that you're saying like there's this fear. For me, and I think, and I'm going back to saying this is arrogant, but I think that's why some of these spaces that I create for men have been really productive, is because I'm saying like, it's okay that you've made these mistakes. You are here and you're open to doing the work.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. just for folks who might be listening, to clarify, when you say it is okay.
Oh, yes. There are layers to that.
Yeah, because I know that's not, I know that, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's some fucked up shit, right? It was there was a study that was done, I believe it was a few years ago, in prisons in England, I think. I could be botching this. But it was doing restorative and transformative justice work with serial killers. And it was talking about rewiring the brain and neuroplasticity. And again, it goes back to this throwaway culture, right? So I'm not saying you get a free pass at all. But I am saying that it is possible to be better. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is in not off with somebody's head.
Right.
But like, yes, you are also called
You're part of the society. You are part of our humanity. And again, we live in a culture that makes us sick, right? There are things where I'm just like, yes, there are things that people need to make up for, but I don't believe in prisons. And I believe that we live in a society that makes us sick and makes us do stupid shit without knowing it, or understanding it. So how do we heal that? And how do we transform that? And how do we create a new type of society?
What are some questions or pigeonholing of this conversation that you'd like to see us move past?
I think for me, in having any challenging conversation, and this is myself included, we have tendencies to get really defensive. And it's really hard for us. Like, we were never taught how to have challenging conversations. So when I went to USC, it was great when I was talking to my allies who came with me. They were like, what are some of your main goals? Which pushed me because I was like, I'm very detail oriented. Yeah. And one of my main goals was just to be able to get the participants to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? To be okay having these really challenging conversations, and to understand that they're, like, feminism isn't like a dirty word, it doesn't mean that they're directly being attacked.
Who, men?
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, it was like 19-year-old frat boys at USC, which is very interesting. But it was great. And I think that it was really successful. There was a moment in the workshop where one of the young men was like, I don't think anybody, he was just prefacing his statement, and he was like, I don't think anybody in here is racist or sexist. We would never do that. And then he went on to speak his statement. And when I replied, I was like, actually, we are all racist and sexist. We live in a racist, sexist society. We were all enculturated that way. And when we can claim that, then we can move through doing the work.
How was that received?
They were actually really open to it. It was almost like there was a sigh of okay. It was really cool. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, thinking about sexuality. When we normalize these things that are really challenging, then we can really start doing the work.
What do you mean by normalize?
I was just going to say around sexuality, right? Yeah. There's such a do not talk about it, or, right? But when we talk about it as enjoyable or natural, then we can really get into healing work or expressive work or whatever folks need to do, right? And I'm not saying normalize racism and sexism, but normalize the idea that we all are enculturated in that society and we all have those within us.
It reminds me of one thing that an aha moment was for me when we started really, as a culture, I think maybe because of Brene Brown, started to talk about guilt and shame. That we used to always say white guilt, but I think a lot of this, it is shame.
I just listened to that the other day and I can't remember, so refresh my memory on the difference between guilt and shame.
So guilt would be I made a mistake. Shame would be I am a mistake. So if I say or have done something sexist rather than I made a mistake, it's I am the KKK.
Right.
As a person,
my humanity is at question.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it, right? My humanity is at question because I'm owning this. Versus I can own this, but still understand that I'm valid as a human.
And I can transform.
Yeah. I have the power to transform myself.
That was one of the insights I found doing this kind of work. What are some other little tweaks or insights you found? Because as facilitators, our job is to help move people through these things. What are some ways you found can move people through these tough conversations?
Having fun.
I love that.
That's one of the things that's really big for me. It's these questions, these conversations can get so serious and so heavy. It's really important for me, you read it, to have that joy factor, right? To have that silly factor, to bring laughter and comedy and music into this. So that, again, we're in it for the long haul, right? Mm-hmm. When we bring that joy factor in, we're not deathly afraid of having these conversations.
So since you're saying, patriarchy and sexism, they're a system, does that system affect all of us?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we live in that system. We're raised in that system. It's incredibly, like, you look at Target aisles, right? The pink and the blue, and it's just pervasive. Women can internalize patriarchy as much as men can, right? Because it is the system that we're raised in. Ways in which patriarchy are internalized in women tend to come up with like self-doubt, self-esteem issues, feelings of like when I say that I'm a good person, that I do good work. Like, I went for a run with a friend this morning and was like, we kept prefacing things with like, oh, I hope this doesn't come off as arrogant, right? Or when we take time for ourselves, oh, are people going to think I'm selfish, right? If I take a self-care day. Those are ways that like it's internalized in self. And then I think when it's internalized in women amongst women, there's a lot of like haterism or jealousy. So whenever I feel like jealous, I have to really like look at like, why am I there? Like, what is that really there? Because ultimately, when I'm being my best self, I'm like, we rise by lifting others. We all rise together, right? So if I support you, then we're all rising. And I'm not an angel, and I can't be that way at all times, and I don't want to be inauthentic, and that is a way patriarchy plays itself out in me. The self-doubt, the self-esteem, the jealousy, those are all things that I participate in.
What are some ways as a woman entrepreneur, business owner in leadership development space that you've seen a lot of these things we're talking about play out?
I think, again, it's like folks will question, like, why are you choosing to do this work? Right? Why are you choosing to work with men? Or I think even in general, for me, like, oppressive systems put people down versus liberatory systems let people be free, right? So when people are putting people down, we're buying into an oppressive system. When we say, oh, they're doing that work, or, oh, I'm going to judge them because of this, that's partaking in an oppressive system. Versus like, yes, get it, girl, do your thing. You're doing good work. Like, that's liberatory work.
That's badass.
Cool.
One thing I found is you'll listen to a podcast and it's by a white guy who interviews a white guy. And let's say both of them are amazing people, really good at what they do. So then you listen to the other white guy's podcast. He interviews white guys. You're like, this other white guy's really interesting. You listen to the white guy who's got the podcast, and you can go like perpetually. One rabbit, like, oh, let me check out. And they're all really awesome people. But because it's so insular of white guys interviewing white guys, you could just like listen to white guy podcasts for the rest of the year.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I've never experienced that. I also... Tell me why you brought that up.
I was thinking this week because I was listening to, what's his name? The guy who wrote Blink. Malcolm Gladwell. Have you heard of him? He's the guy who coined like 10,000 hours of anything. You can become a master at it. Okay. You heard of this? So yeah, that was his thing, 10,000 hours. And he interviewed this guy named Adam Grant, who's a workplace psychologist. Okay. So he all talks about how to make workplaces not suck. And he interviewed, my gateway drug into him was went to the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and he interviewed Trevor Noah.
Swoon.
And we got this behind the scenes of the creative process that goes into writing the Daily Show on the clock. And he did it from a workplace psychologist. And then he did another episode on how can we train our minds to crave criticism. And so I was like, it was a really awesome episode.
That sounds really interesting.
So he interviewed Ray Dalio, who manages one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. And they have this thing called radical candor, where the whole company is set up where they crave criticism. So then I started listening to Ray Dalio's podcast, and I like stopped and was like, I'm just going to go on this white guy loop.
Right.
Like, because there's no... I mean, Trevor Noah's diverse, but you know what I'm saying? Like, And I was like, and I can catch myself doing that if you listen to these like really top 5 podcasts are always like Tim Ferriss, Lewis Howes, all great people, but white guys.
It's so interesting. Like, I mean, we crave familiarity, right? So we like to be in that zone of like, I resonate with, like, most of my friends are people of color, right? And I have a certain, we think a certain way and we challenge each other, you know, but it's definitely a very insular group, which is why I love talking to you, because it's like, okay, this is something new. This is something fresh. It's challenging, you know, but we are such creatures of habit that it's like so easy to get stuck in those. And I think that can be really divisive too, right? Like it's great to build those like bridges to like other and push yourself into other things and other ways of being and seeing and I
agree.
I
think it's a comment though on the systemicness of
whiteness.
And especially the leadership and entrepreneurial space. That as a white guy, when I step in as a business owner, I automatically am going to have people are going to give me more credentials when I start to talk about business because. Who do you think of when you think of a business owner? White guys.
Right.
Even if I'm wearing jeans and tennis shoes. Oh, well, so does Mark Zuckerberg.
Right. It was really interesting when I went to the fraternity, and I'm just speaking of this because this is the most recent experience. But when they came in to like, just see, okay, who is this and like who's coming in? Like the automatic go-to was to talk to the white man that I was with. Right? Like he was the one, everybody was like, all the young men were like, okay, let me talk to him, assuming that he's the one in charge. Right? And then Serge was like, no, this is Amreen from the Real Talk Project. Like she's the one who's facilitating. And it was interesting.
I did that the other day and was like, I wish somebody was here to like see how bad how big of a sexist move I just made. I was doing a fundraising event and, I knew the person who owned it was a Jewish guy. So there's so many stereotypes I made. And we were setting up, and all the women were dressed in uniform except for this one guy. So when we needed something, I was like, hey, I went to the guy that I stereotyped was the Jewish guy owner. Was like, hey, can do this, this, and this. He's like, actually, the person you should talk to is the manager. And pointed this Latina woman. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, wow. Yeah. And I was like, I bet you that happens almost every time they cater.
Yeah.
And I bet you he goes to Megas if he's, you know, like,
there's probably
happened
some
again.
Running joke about it. Totally.
And I was like, walked right into that one time.
Yeah. Yeah, there is, I mean, I guess maybe this is the times where sometimes I wish I wasn't woke because like the times where I question like, is this person acting this way because they're racist or they're sexist towards me? Right? Like did this woman walk past me or was she really rude because she doesn't like people with brown colored skin? Or did this man do this because he values other men's opinions over mine? You know, it sucks. I hate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as a highly educated female woman of color that is an entrepreneur, like these are things that are going to be popping up more and more, I'm sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of what a microaggression is, right?
Totally.
That it has.
Totally.
That it probably happens to that woman constantly.
Totally.
So I'm like, oops. I mean, I didn't take it lightly.
The same thing happened to me. Like I went to a yoga teacher retreat. It was just actually a yoga retreat. And somebody assumed that I was the food server.
Wow.
Instead of a participant. And it ruined my whole, I let it ruin. I could have let it go, but it was like it was the first thing that happened to me as I walked in the door. And I was like, man, really?
It's tough too because yoga spaces are more and more becoming very white.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually going to host a people of color yoga retreat with a dear friend of mine at the end of May. And so we're talking about like hosting more yoga for people of color in safe spaces. And she's like, well, the staff at my retreat center are white. How are we going to talk to them about it? And how can they integrate in this space? And the manager of the whole place is white. And she was assuming that she could go. And I was like, no, she can't. You know, like it's important to have safe spaces for people of color, especially at yoga retreats, because there can be so many microaggressions that happen there.
I think there's importance in caucusing.
Yeah. It's another place where a lot of folks get really defensive, and the go-to is like, well, that's more divisionary, right? Or that's creating divides. And for me, when we can do this work internally, and like if it's a yoga retreat, like I'm here to heal. I'm not here to do that work. That's at a different place, right? So I need, again, we were talking about this earlier. I need this safe space with my people so that I can do this work on the outside. Sean Ginwright is an educator that I heard a quote from the other day that was really powerful. And it's like, I need to take care of myself so that I can give from my excess and not from my being. So and it's not exactly that, but I was just like, oh, dang.
So, I mean, it's like a candle. Like if I burn you out.
Totally. There's nothing. There's nothing. Yeah.
One gym I'm a part of, they asked for feedback. And I was like, I think you need more teachers of color, especially in yoga.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they got so mad.
Really?
Out of the woodwork, they had a woman of color reply to me.
No.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. We have... I'm like, I don't know. In my experience, most of your yoga teachers are white men. That's been my experience. Maybe at random time, I'm looking at the teachers.
Right. Let's highlight this. Yeah. Wow. And that's, again, when we're talking about pigeonholing, like that defensiveness is something that, like, I think is really important to learn as a culture of, like, how do we go into those, like, critical spaces and become used to criticism. And when we get those, then we grow more.
Yeah.
Right? And if we're not, then we're staying stagnant. And staying stagnant in a very racist, sexist, ableist, blah, blah, blah society is not a good thing.
One thing that I think is that we're never going to be able to get rid of socialization, but I think we can get rid of, eventually, discrimination. What do you think in a world free from discrimination, socialization would look like?
I like imagining that. I think, again, it would be love-based. I think it would be humanizing. I think that it would be incredibly liberating. I'm imagining little kids running around in forests and little flowers in their hair. But I think ultimately, like, my dream for that would be for us to all be socialized to really care about each other. You know, because if we care about each other on a we're all human level, like, we're going to try to lift each other up. Right? And I'm not going to want to see this person suffering.
Yeah.
And I'm going to want them to be happy and joyful. So I want them to be free to be whoever they are.
That's wonderful.
It'd be really nice.
One day.
Yeah. One day. We're getting closer.
Yes.
Little by little.
So you might have heard me say that this is my year of grace. The year I interviewed you was my year of balance.
Okay, cool.
So I pick an intention, and I like to discuss it with my guests.
Okay,
so
cool.
What for you is grace?
My mama. Styling grace. No, grace is something I think a lot about. Grace is something I think a lot about. I think it is this ability to have challenging conversations. I think it is an ability to admit mistakes. I think it is an ability to sit in my power and be confident and not feel like I'm being arrogant. I think it is looking cute. I think it's being compassionate. Yeah. I love, like, that idea of grace.
What do you love about it?
It's very warm and fuzzy to me. It is, again, it reminds me of my mom. Like, my mom is one of the most graceful people I know. She's just so compassionate and so giving and, like, really cares about the community and the family. She's, like, one of the most loving people I know.
Yeah. Was yesterday her birthday?
Yesterday was her birthday. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. What brings, what's been coming up for you? Can I switch role reversal?
Of course, yeah. And what's interesting is I've done my year of courage, my year of expression, my year of balance, and now it's my year of grace. On all those other ones, people rarely ask, what do I think? But for some reason, with grace, every guest has been like, what is it for you?
That's so interesting.
So I'm not sure why. It's something to reflect upon, but it's been one that...
Maybe it's something people don't talk as often about. Because I feel like, balance is something I feel like folks talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me.
Well, I'm trying to think how I can give a different answer than I gave to folks already, but I can say it's... For me, originally, how I identified grace was that I'm the kind of person who's discipline and hard work are my home. And so when I have a goal, I get really disciplined and I just work. And so I can get to the point where I'm banging my head against this brick wall. And grace is those moments where I let go and I find a moment of peace and trust. And then something magical happens. That moment's grace.
Is it almost like a phase?
Yeah, I think it could be like a phase.
Yeah.
I think the aha I'm getting in this conversation is I think grace is two things. One, that space between, where you were saying the ownership and then stepping into the ally, that there has to be a level of grace. Because if you continue to shame yourself, then you're going to be more likely to want to perpetuate hurt. So... Yeah. I think grace is that forgiving of yourself.
Self-compassion.
And you probably need grace to accept criticism.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
I like that.
Thanks for the aha.
Yeah. Yay.
Is there any questions that you wanted to talk about or anything that you wanted to ask of me or you wanted yourself to speak on that we didn't get a chance to bring up?
Another thing I've been thinking about recently, and I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on this, is as a woman of color, I was socialized in a certain way, right? And I think our schooling system in America is very cookie cutter and very do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And it takes away a level of creativity. And for me, I was always taught that I couldn't do art or I couldn't do music because they're just creative realms that wouldn't lead to success.
Yeah.
And as I step out of that role of being a teacher in the classroom and I create my own way, I've been thinking about creativity a lot. And so when you were there was this whole podcast on the critical, what was it?
I mentioned the creative process of the Daily Show, or it wasn't criticism?
The receiving criticism. Okay. But I was I wonder if you know of anything, or if you wanted to get a conversation started around ways to be creative. You know, for me, I'm a very direct thinker, and I'm a Virgo, and rising sign is I love making lists. So I've been really thinking about ways to, as an entrepreneur, be more creative.
Well, I'm a big fan of process over product in anything. So I teach a monthly online writing workshop. And when it comes to, let's say, the art side of creativity is I think anything can become a leadership lesson when you switch from I'm doing art to create a finished product that looks amazing to I'm creating art because of the transformation that's going to happen during the process. So, for instance, if I'm drawing and I mess up, I'm not after the product. I'm after seeing how can I take this mistake and turn it into something intentional. And so you can then pull that into life.
It allows for a lot more freedom because you're not expecting... Whoa, crap, sorry.
It's all good.
You're not expecting this one outcome.
And another aha I had for myself was in terms of creativity that you can bring creativity into all the different aspects of your life. So I love bringing creativity into how I show love to Adora. On her birthday or every other month I do a special day for her. I love just thinking of how can I show my love in a creative way.
That's dope.
So I thinking of creativity outside of just
art. Life is art.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What about for you?
I've just been trying to push myself to not judge myself, I think. And I this ties into patriarchy in the sense of like that self-criticism and that hater that's in my head is very rooted in patriarchy. And so undoing that and giving myself the grace to be free and to make mistakes allows me to be more creative and more free.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Where can folks connect with you and tell you how awesome they are and sign up for your course?
TheRealTalkProject.com. Okay. Or Amrina is my Instagram. I also have _TheRealTalkProject Instagram. Okay. I have the Real Talk Project Facebook, all of that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And for those on the go, TomReal.com/Amreen. We need to do something different actually because Amreen's already taken. So let's do TomReal.com/The Real Talk Project. Oh, cool. Did I say it right?
Yeah. Real Talk.
TomReal.com/The Real Talk Project. One more time, TomReal.com/The Real Talk Project is where you'll find this week's episode. When's your next cohort starting, or is it a pre-recorded class?
Mid-May.
Mid-May.
Yeah.
So sign up now. Is there like any early bird pricing or anything like that?
It's actually donation based.
So, actually donation based.
It's a $60 suggested donation. Folks who can donate more, great. You're supporting women's work. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that money is not a barrier. The only barrier is making the decision.
Yeah.
So
it's work. It's work. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is it just a course, or do you get to interact? Is there discussions?
There is discussions. There's online discussions. There's 2 video calls. Yeah, there's homework. Yeah.
Nice. Can you listen to the courses as audio?
That's a great no.
Okay.
Well, there's a video intro to each portion, like to each week.
Yeah.
And then there's articles to read for homework.
Oh, okay.
And stuff
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, once again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I always love this.
It's great. We'll have to make a routine every year and a half.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's cool.
So our ritual for ending is for you to share your invitation with those listening. So what's your invitation for folks to do, to be, to consider, to think about? What's your invitation?
This one would be for, can I look that way?
Yeah, let's do it.
My invitation for you would be to be curious, to ask questions of self and others, and listen with an open heart.
I mean,
I
appreciate that. Cool. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to all those listening or watching, as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. Perfect. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at TomEarl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.